right. Well, how y'all doing?
Good.
How y'all doing? Did I do that right?
Yeah.
See, because I'm from Detroit, and Detroit's like the Motor City, so we think fast, we talk fast, we drive fast, and we act fast, and we don't have time for how y'all doing. So we just say, what's up? Can you guys do that? Can you say, what's up?
What's up?
You can do better than that. Say, what's up?
What's up?
Good job, good job. Did you guys know that Detroit is the only major city in the United States that is actually south of Canada? Or north of Canada. True story. And that's a good thing because here we are at the True Story Conference. Now, the reason why I told you that is because I know that right now, more than anything, you guys want to get out your smartphones and you want to look that up. You want to see if Detroit, in fact, is north of Canada. And it actually really, truly is. But I didn't come here to talk to you about that. I came here to share with you the true story about what God has done in my life, and very recently, because 6 years ago, you guys, I didn't believe in God. I grew up in what you might think of as a normal family. These are my mom and my dad. And going through pictures, you know, of back in those days, I always noticed that I kind of always had that look on my face. And, you know, I thought, I had a really happy childhood. But then I realized God gave me the spiritual discernment of fashion sense at a very young age. And I was really disturbed by the fashion of the 70s. Look at my dad's pants. Weird. But my dad, you know, he was a really hard-working guy. And my mom, she actually was able to stay home and raise me and my siblings. Now, these are my 3 siblings. I have 2 brothers, and again, the tuxedo shirt, bad fashion in the 70s. And my sister, my brothers are 16 and 15 years older than me, and my sister is 10 years older than me. So my parents had me when they were older, and I never had that, you know, kind of sibling rivalry or competition. It would be really weird if my oldest brother at the age of 20 was trying to compete with his 4-year-old little sister, right? So rather than being like the youngest, I was the center of the universe. And again, not only do we make bad fashion choices in the 70s, look at that wallpaper. I mean, the interior design is just awful. But anyways, I ended up, I went to a Catholic school, and so I just had a really, really good childhood. And between the ages of 8 and 10, my life was turned upside down. Both of my brothers decided to move out west. My sister got married and she moved to Texas, and my dad died when I was 10. My mom, she was at the age where most people are looking forward to retirement. She was trying to figure out what she was going to do as a career at the age of 50. And that put a lot of stress on her. And after my dad passed away, he died suddenly of a heart attack. I knew that God had the power to stop that. That's what I learned in school. I learned that God loves me unconditionally, but yet he took away my entire family. And I also was really troubled by the idea that this God of the Old Testament, you know, the one that if you step this much this way, right? How is this same God as Jesus who wants to be your friend? And I dared not question that, not because I feared that I was going to get punished by my teachers or by my mom. I was scared of God. I had an unhealthy fear of the Lord. And that is what I was bound to. I was bound to this fear. And you know, you guys, when you are bound to an idea or you're bound to something, it controls everything you do. It controls all the decisions that you make. And so I really started to question things in my mind. But I would never let those questions come to the surface because I was so terrified that God would take me out. And so I stuffed all that down. Well, after my dad died, I became a latchkey kid, and if you don't know what that means, a latchkey kid is a kid that when they come home from school, you know, neither one of their parents can be there, so a neighbor might watch them, or, you know, the parent might leave a key somewhere for the child to get in. And in my case, I had neighbors who would keep an eye on me. The problem with that is I was, you know, a pretty smart kid, book smart, and I matured rather quickly. And these kids that were supposed to be my babysitters really turned out to be my buddies. And they introduced me to drugs and alcohol at the age of 12. By the time I got out of St. Raphael's, my mother couldn't afford to send me to a private school, and so I ended up going to a public school, and I'm convinced that Satan was holding the door open, saying, "Welcome, Catherine." And when I went to that school, you guys, for me at that time, I thought it was exhilarating, because I came from a school where you had to stand in a single file line, you couldn't talk, you had to wear a uniform, and you had to be there every day. Well, the school that I went to in high school, they kind of had a dress code, if you wanted to call it that. Not only could you talk in the hallway, you could play music, there were fights in the hallway, and the attendance policy, you got 9 unexcused absences a semester, unexcused. That means that I could cut class 9 times a semester, and my mom would never know about it. And we had open campus, so you could leave the school, and that's exactly what we did. We spent most of our time in high school down at the park doing drugs and drinking. And as far as sex and relationships, I knew deep in my heart somehow that it was wrong, but nobody had ever really talked to me about that. And so I became bound to the culture of my school. And the culture of my school was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I used to justify having, relations in my mind, because you know what? Hey, I got a Bon Jovi, a John Bon Jovi hairstyle. If you don't know who John Bon Jovi is, you can look that up later on. I actually think I could have won a Bon Jovi lookalike contest back then. But anyways, I'm like, I got this Bon Jovi haircut, even though I'm a girl, and I'm 16, I know everything, right? It's my body. I can do whatever I want with it. And I knew, though, deep down inside, I knew that was a lie. Well, all that cutting class caught up with me, and I got kicked out of high school my junior year. Only by the grace of God was I able to graduate on time, and that's a story for another time. I got all kinds of stories. We could have 20 conferences. But anyways, so at 17, I wanted to get out from under being bound to my mom, being bound to a religion that made absolutely no sense to me by the time I was 17. I saw, the things that were going on in the church and what my friends were doing over here, and I'm like, you want me to follow that? Everyone's having a good time, so I said, gotta go. And I wanted to move out of my mom's, but I remember I felt really bad because I knew she was gonna be alone. She never remarried. And so I expressed that to her, and I will never forget the words that she told me. She said, honey, when I was your age, now you have to remember, my mom was 40 years older than me. So, she was basically a young adult, like in the early 50s, late 40s. And she said, when I was your age, it was absolutely inappropriate for a woman to move out and get her own place and go to school and get a job and all that. Instead, we moved out once we met our husband, we got married, we had kids, we moved into their house, and as she said those words, they terrified me to my very soul. I thought, I don't want to be bound like that. I don't want to be bound to anyone. And so I moved out, and because my grades were so awful, and my mom didn't have any money, college was pretty much out of the question, even though I really wanted to go. And so I did what any party animal would do. I went and got a job working at a bar. Well, when I started working there, I met 4 people who I was just drawn to these 4 people. They were super intellectual. They loved to debate, and I loved to debate. I loved to talk about politics and history and science and all these things. Super intellectual, loved to drink and have fun, and all of them were atheists. And it took this group of people probably a week to undo what little Sunday school faith I had left. I can remember even trying to tell my mother that God did not exist. I actually tried to undo my mom's faith when I was in my early 20s. Well, the owner of the bar that I worked at was a business person, and he saw something in me, and he encouraged me to go to college, and he helped me financially go. So I ended up going to a junior college, and I did really well. And I got accepted to the greatest university in the history of the world, the University of Michigan. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I realized what I'm saying. At least I'm not in Ohio, okay? But anyways, after going to U of M and graduating from there, I actually went to law school. And I graduated from there. I worked for a United States president, a United States senator, a governor, a couple of Congress people, and I started a $1 million business. And I was on top of the world. I was bound to nothing. I was not bound to any husband. I was not bound to any kids. I didn't even have a boss. I was the boss, right? And I certainly wasn't bound to the moral monster upstairs. Well, on the outside, everything was great. But on the inside, I was dying. Literally. You guys, by November of 2012, I weighed 95 pounds. I weigh 125 pounds right now. Can you imagine me 30 pounds lighter? I turn this way, you can't see me sometimes, right? I weighed 95 pounds. Now, 90 pounds. I remember that December, I walked into the Christian bookstore that was next door to a Kohl's. I was gonna go into Kohl's and buy my mom something for Christmas. And I walked in, and I remember standing in front of a bunch of Bibles. And there was a woman standing next to me, and I said, I need a Bible. And she jumped. She handed me this book, this exact book. And I paid for it. I walked into the parking lot, and I thought, why would I buy this book? This book is nothing but garbage. And I heard a voice say, it's not for her, it's not for your mom, it's for you. So, I went home, I got in bed, and I opened this book to the words, in the beginning, God. Now, I cannot put into words what happened in that moment. Maybe download or injection, I don't know. But in that moment, I was given the gift of faith. And I knew that this was a true story. I didn't know how. I knew that, but I knew in my heart. And I was like, how could I have ever rejected this? And I couldn't put this book down. And so, by January of 2013, I was told that it would be a stretch for me to expect to see the end of 2013. But he had different plans. He wanted me to be here today to talk to you guys, right? So, in July of 2013, the doctors told me that my body was healing itself and they couldn't explain it. I said, well, I can. I can explain it. And so I walked out of the hospital that day. And I said, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a little freaked out. And I said, what do you want from me? And he said, I want you to live for me. I want you to be bound to me. Because you've been bound to yourself your whole life, and you see where that gets you. I want you to be bound to me. And you know why it didn't freak me out, the idea of being bound to something? Because you know what Jesus also taught me in that moment? Freedom, true freedom, requires boundaries. Now you might be thinking, how does that work? Well, I always have to figure out a way to get my dog into anything I present. So here he is. This is Chewy, he's my dog. And I live in an apartment, and where there's a sliding glass door, and it opens up on the lake. and I have 2 neighbors on either side of me that he absolutely loves. And they just love him. My one next door neighbor calls him his grand dog. And so whenever he, gets to go out, he can't decide, is he gonna go visit Matt and Marie, or is he gonna go run over to Barb's? And he's all excited, he just wants to run around and play. Well, if I go out my front door, there's a parking lot. And my fear is that if I let him out, he probably won't go very far, because, he's got it really good at home. He'll probably go visit Matt and Marie, he might run over to see Barb, but what if a squirrel runs by, and he gets excited, and he takes off and chases the squirrel, and goes around the building and gets hit by a car? Well, guess what? My dog is not allowed to go outside back there. He's not free. He's not free to do what he wants. And that doesn't seem fair. So I got a little rope, and I tied it around that beam that holds up the balcony of the person that lives above me. And it's got just enough give on it to where he can run to, either neighbor, and he can run around, and he's free. But there's no danger that he's gonna run around the outside of that building and get hit by a car, because he's safe, he's protected. Freedom requires boundaries. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. So, like I said, when I walked out of that hospital that day, God said, I want you to go live for me. Well, I did something. This was a year after I got saved. And my friends couldn't believe this, because I got on a plane with 8 strangers and flew to Bogota, Colombia, and stayed in like this bunkhouse with 8 strangers. If somebody would have told me 6 months before I got on that plane that was gonna happen, I would have laughed in their face. You're talking to a girl who 6 months to a year before these photos were taken, refused to stay anywhere that didn't have 5 stars next to it, certainly wouldn't share my personal space with complete strangers, and I'm not getting on a plane unless I've had about 50 drinks. But God. I've had the absolute privilege of mentoring young ladies, and I'm going to tell you something. These girls have taught me more about myself than most people. I'm also very honored to serve a couple of ministries. We go downtown to Detroit, and we just learn from and love on the homeless. You guys, 10 years from now, you might not even talk to the person you came to this conference with. And it's not because you're going to have a falling out. It's just, people grow up, life separates, life happens. 15 years from now, you might not remember some of these speakers. You'll remember Brett and, hopefully. And 20 years from now, you probably won't remember anything about this crazy chick from Detroit, other than the fact that Detroit's northern Canada. If there's one thing, you guys, that you take away from anything I said today, it's this. Whatever you allow to bind you will ultimately be what defines you. You're going to be bound to something in your life. Are you going to be bound to your school culture? Are you going to be bound to your friends and what they think about you? Are you going to be bound to even your parents and what they think about you? Are you going to be bound to what the world wants you to do? Are you going to be bound to yourself and be the master of your own universe? Or are you going to be bound to the truth? My prayer for all of you, and you guys, I know it's a rough world out there. I get it. My prayer for all of you is that you stay bound to what's true. Thank you.
Amen.